Hello, faithful, and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis. And today we're going to be briefly recapping the 49ers' very good 40-34 loss to Detroit. I'll explain that. We're going to be talking how the run D got gashed. The run offense wasn't much better. Some scary defensive stats overall as we end the season. We're going to be talking Ricky Pearsall and George Kittle's big day against Detroit, Brock's performance, his elbow, which winds up being much ado about nothing, the ridiculous aftermath on social media and otherwise, Niners that made the Pro Bowl, and we will briefly discuss the 49ers and Cardinals season finale this Sunday. So let's jump right into it. And as I said on the intro, this was a good loss for the 49ers. And when you think about it, it was really the ideal game given what was at stake in terms of draft position and scheduling. San Francisco was moving the ball up and down the field. They were competitive into the fourth quarter. It was an entertaining game, no punts. The Niners lose, which has them now 11th in the draft slotting order for April's draft, and they guaranteed the fourth place schedule for finishing last in the NFC West. Now, they're 11th currently. As it pertains to the draft, they can drop down no lower than 14th with a win against Arizona. The schedule, honestly, is the most important thing. And coming out of the Detroit game with no major injuries, there were some minor injuries. We'll talk about Brock's elbow, other players that got banged up a bit. But they didn't get steamrolled by Detroit by any means. And getting that loss guarantees a fourth place schedule. And I mentioned it last podcast. That means in addition to their home and away games, the NFC West, and they are also playing the NFC South and AFC South. They also now have the Bears at home, at the Giants, and at the Browns. Two teams with major quarterback issues, and Chicago with Caleb Williams looking okay, but that being an extremely bad team. If they had won the game against Detroit and beaten Arizona this upcoming Sunday, instead of those three games, they would host the Packers, go to Dallas, and go to Cincinnati. Niners make out much better. Now, remember, with the schedule, the rest of the NFC West is also playing the NFC South and the AFC South, which are obviously two very weak divisions. But the Cardinals now are getting Green Bay, Dallas, and Cincinnati. The Seahawks are getting the second place teams in those three divisions, the NFC North, AFC East, and AFC North. And of course, the Rams are getting the first place teams in those three divisions. So while this season was wildly not what a lot of people anticipated, especially bottoming out at 6-10 and probably finishing up at 6-11, little bit more luck as it pertains to health, getting some players back, making some shrewd and smart acquisitions in the draft and free agency. The Niners have the possibility of really rolling through their schedule next year. We're not going to get into that yet. There's no need to. We don't know who's going to be on the roster. Prior to the draft, I will be taking a look at that, and we'll discuss the schedule potentially next podcast. That's why I'm calling it a good loss. And the fact that Brock didn't seriously injure his shoulder or his elbow or his wrist still keeps it a good loss. And him getting banged up in a minor capacity is still a good thing because he's not on the field against Arizona. And who knows, God forbid he takes a blindside hit, non-contact injury to the knee, something like that. The elbow's going to be fine. It was a funny bone injury, really nothing more than that. And the Niners get out of Dodge healthy, top 11 draft pick, and bottom 4 or last place schedule in their division. Now, the run D got absolutely gashed. Detroit ran it 33 times for 152 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs by himself, 18 rushes for 117 and a score. The Niners were getting blown off the ball on that side. Did they make a couple stops in the running game? Sure. but between Gibbs, Josh Reynolds, who I believe is a wide receiver, was their backup running back. They got whatever they wanted whenever they wanted against the Niners defense, which is, I mean, obviously a major red flag. The running game now, Kyle Shanahan's 49ers have been outrushed in 9 of their 16 games that they've played. A prideful running team. And yes, no McCaffrey, no Mason, no Mitchell. You're down to Guerendo. Last week you had Patrick Taylor. And Detroit is a difficult team to run against, a top 4 run defense. But they got more than doubled. They got more than doubled up. They only ran it 18 times for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. Guerendo led the way, 9 for 34. Now, I'm not going to get on my soapbox and say like the typical 49er way to win this game is less than 30 passes and more than 30 runs, because it seemed, I don't want to say obvious, but the plan from the get-go was to throw against the Lions defense. I mean, granted, the Lions have injuries at every level of their defense. Cornerback, linebacker, defensive line. Unfortunately, no injuries at safety, specifically Kirby Joseph. That could have saved 2 turnovers for Brock. But the way to beat Detroit was to throw on them. And Kyle said as much after the game. He thought that they had to pass the ball to win the game. The way that the Lions play run defense, it's hard to run on them. They had a series in the second half where the Niners threw it 16 straight times. That wasn't part of the script, but they got behind the chains between holding penalties and false starts, 2nd and 10, 1st and 15s. Kyle thought it would be easier to move the ball through the air than on the ground. And he was right. The team passed for, with Dobbs coming in as well, 400 yards, ran it for only 75. They outgained Detroit by about 25 yards or so, whatever it may be. It didn't really matter for the final score. But this was a game where balance didn't really matter. And, you know, maybe if they had one of their top 3 running backs, or if you want to kick Eli Mitchell to the curb, Mason or McCaffrey, maybe they would have been a little bit more balanced. 18 runs, 4 runs were by quarterbacks, 3 by Purdy and 1 by Josh Dobbs when he took it into the end zone to make it a 40-34 game on that last drive. And before Jake Moody had probably the second worst onside kick we've ever seen from a 49er, Mitch Wishnowsky being the first a month or 2 ago, where he completely whiffed the ball. At least Jake Moody kicked it, although he sent it rocketing out of bounds. I mean, there wasn't anything that Jake Moody did well on Monday night. So the passing game, and Brock, you know, shouldered him. We're going to get to his stats and how he performed. We'll talk about the interceptions, et cetera. But since we're talking about defense and the run D getting gashed, obviously, you know, they couldn't force a punt. The Lions have a very good defense. We know that. Other teams out there have made them punt at least once in a game. Niners couldn't do that. Granted, the Lions couldn't force the Niners to punt, which is more an indictment on Detroit as they head into the playoffs. You know, they very well might not beat Minnesota this Sunday night. It's in Detroit. They struggled with Minnesota earlier in the season in Minnesota. They are a less healthy team now defensively. The Vikings are going to get after that offense blitz-wise. I don't know if they're going to get home. Detroit is a very good offensive line, but if think about this, the Lions were considered the best team in football for a large majority of the season. And I don't know where they are now between themselves, the Vikings, the Eagles, and the Chiefs. You want to throw the Bills in there? You certainly can. But if they don't get the number 1 seed, they don't beat Minnesota and get a bye, there's the real possibility they lose their first round game. They're one and done. Or they have to go to Philadelphia or Minnesota in the second round and have major problems against those teams. This is a team that needs the bye, a week to get healthy. I'm not sure who they would get healthy back for the divisional round. But this is a 49er offense, and we'll put a bow on offense in a second. 49ers offense that had trouble scoring 20 points the last 4 weeks, and they put up 34 on Detroit. The same amount that they scored in last year's NFC Championship game, except Detroit scored 9 more points this time around to obviously, you know, get the victory. But the defense, no punt, no turnover, 28 turnovers forced last year, only 17 this year. It left players like Jair Brown saying, I don't even know what to tell you. I don't know what it is. And players have been saying, like Bosa and Warner and Demo for the majority of the season, that, this isn't us. We have to finish. We have to do X, Y, and Z. Well, why aren't you guys doing X, Y, and Z? Why aren't you tackling better? Why aren't you getting to the quarterback more outside of Nick Bosa? Why aren't you generating turnovers, getting stops on third down, getting stops in the red zone? Outside of yards allowed, and the Lions put up a whole lot of yards on Monday night, this is a defensive failure across the board this year. It really is. Third down conversions this season, they're allowing teams to convert on third down 43.4% of the time. That's bottom third of the league. There are only 7 teams that are worse than them. Red zone touchdown percentage, 66% of the time. 2/3 of the time they allow a touchdown. There's only 3 teams worse. And they've allowed 35 red zone touchdowns. Only the Cowboys and Panthers are worse. I don't care what this team does between the 20s in terms of yards allowed. That's, they're a top 10. I don't know. I haven't seen the stats since the Lion game. I know it knocked them down a peg, but say they're a top 10 defense overall and against the pass, and probably top, 15, 17 against the run. If you want to call anything top 15, top half of the league. These are numbers and stats that I don't think Kyle Shanahan is going to ignore. He came out and spoke positively about defensive coordinator Nick Sorensen earlier in the week, that Sorensen has gotten better as the year's gone on. He's been put in situations where he's had to make adjustments, and he has made them, and it's going to make him a better coach moving forward. Nothing about him coming back. No, no endorsement. And usually endorsements are kind of like the kiss of death, except when owner Jed York, I guess, was asked again about Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. Are they coming back? And they obviously are. He's like, you could write that down. They're not going anywhere. They're probably both going to play out their contracts unless something ridiculously catastrophic happens. As they should come back. The internet rumor about the Bears trading for Kyle Shanahan was started by a schmuck on Reddit, a nobody. And that's how these non-stories, this non-tent content, starts to gain a life of its own when one person says it, a nobody, literally a nobody, and it gets picked up, a nobody theorizing something. And it has to be brought to Kyle's attention, to John's attention, and to Jed York's attention. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that in this age of social media, everybody has a voice, but they think they have a say. And now I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent, but in terms of you have a voice on social media. I mean, depending on how big your following is, there's a certain number of ears or eyeballs that listen or see what you're typing. But you have no say in this idea that YouTubers, people with podcasts like myself, even journalists, legitimate journalists in the media, asking Kyle and scumbags like Grant Cohn, asking Kyle difficult questions, antagonizing questions just to be a prick, that's actually holding them accountable. You're not holding anybody accountable. No one online is holding any coach or GM or players of any sports team anywhere accountable because you are voicing your opinion or you're asking a question. You know who holds John and Kyle accountable? Take a guess. Jed York. And it's not even to the point that if the fans get this, let's use the Jets as an example. Woody Johnson's an absolute embarrassment, right? Letting his son Brick, who the fuck names their son Brick? It's absolutely ridiculous. But, using Madden ratings to influence decision makers, personnel decision makers, to not sign or trade for Jerry Jeudy in the offseason. And his sons, Woody Johnson's sons, being in the locker room, Woody Johnson having the structure where both the coach and the GM report up to him. He's an embarrassment. And as many Jet fans out there that want to get on, WFAN radio in the Northeast or ESPN radio or Reddit, social media, send him letters or anything. Even the media asking questions, you are not holding them accountable. You're just asking questions. Holding someone accountable means you are going to change their behavior, or you have the ability to, like, I can hold my child accountable for breaking something, acting wild and spilling something, and then correct that behavior accordingly, whether it's punishing or taking something away. Who's punishing or taking anything away from these owners or Kyle or John? Nothing. You say, well, I'm not going to go to games. I'm not going to buy um, paraphernalia or jersey or video game. What? Of course you are. I'm not going to watch. Of course you are. That's the biggest cop out bitch pussy thing that someone says. Well, I'm done watching games this year. You're going to watch. That's just another typical knee jerk, stupid thing reaction. And there's too many people. Grant Cohn's one of them, and his Cohn clown clique that's out there thinks they have a say. I've heard one of them say, well, since I'm in the public eye, there's a lot of pressure. You're not in the public eye, dude. There's what, a couple hundred people who would know who you are if they saw you on the street. You're a fucking nobody. Now, God bless the grind and, generating revenue from the stuff that these people do and the time they put into it. And that's all great. There's no jealousy here. Like, you get into things what you put out of it sometimes, and sometimes you get very lucky. And these clowns wouldn't be anything if, they didn't beg Grant Cohn to go on their show and then just start commiserating with them. But there are people out there that actually think that they can hold ownership accountable, flying the banner above MetLife Stadium about the Giants, something about a dumpster fire, having a parade around Cleveland Browns Stadium, however many years ago when they went winless. And if you haven't seen the footage of that, I suggest check it out on YouTube. It is laugh out loud funny. You have people dressed as Big Bird, people trailing floats in their pickups, someone that has a toilet bowl in their pickup truck and they're just sitting on it. Like it's funny stuff, but that changes nothing. We hold no one accountable in the organization. But these stats, let me bring it back, get off the soapbox. These stats are going to be the things that are going to hold, I believe, Nick Sorensen accountable and why I believe he will get let go. And opens the door for someone like an Ulbrich or a Schwartz if he gets fired in Cleveland, or Mike Zimmer in Dallas. I know those are the three I'm bringing up. I'm not bringing up Robert Saleh. He's not coming back. That is a backwards move in his career. He'll have opportunities to be a defensive coordinator somewhere. He's not coming back to San Francisco. Kyle may ask. Doesn't hurt to ask. I mean, he asked Bill Belichick to run his defense. You knew the answer to that was going to be no, but you turn over every rock. Sorensen is going to be gone. And hopefully someone comes in that can get the whatever the hell they're playing, cover 3, wide 9 scheme that Kyle likes to run, and they can evolve it where they can get more aggressive and they can get the scheme and the players understanding things sooner than week 12. Because we heard that the past month of, I want to see all the players come back. I think we have the right personnel and the coaching. It takes a while to get comfortable with the system. How does it take a while to get comfortable with the system? You have all of training camp. You have 3 preseason games. You have joint practices. Even if it bleeds into the first month of the season, maybe I can see that. But not 12 weeks worth of not knowing what's going on and having communication issues. Too many things to overcome. This year was a wash anyway, and maybe it showed that Nick Sorensen isn't the guy, and we need to bring someone in that's a little bit more experienced, that can throw a couple wrinkles in. Kyle's got to get uncomfortable both on offense and defense and change things up before this team plays to their talent level. Nobody's played to their talent level this year. I mean, maybe Kittle, Bosa, maybe 80% of his talent level. I know he's missed a bunch of games. He does have 9.5 sacks, which, I mean, he should really have like in the mid, 10s, 13, 14, 15. But I think defensive changes are going to be on the way. Quickly, I just want to discuss, shout out to the offensive line makeshift between Austin Pleasance and Charlie Heck rotating at left tackle, Nick Sakiel getting the start at left guard. Not difficult, not an easy thing to incorporate 2 brand new people at left tackle, the blind side, protecting Brock Purdy. He was sacked twice, and one of them he did get injured on. But for the most part, he wasn't under duress. He wasn't under any more duress than he was, a normal game where he had his starting five. And as fans, look at this as veteran tryouts for next season. Austin Pleasance has been in the league for a couple of years. Charlie Heck's been in the league. This is his 5th year. They signed Matt Hennessy, a center from the Falcons practice squad, to a 2-year deal. He's going to be here next year as competition for Jake Brendel if Brendel doesn't get cut in the offseason. They're getting looks at other offensive linemen that, worst case scenario, they invite to camp. They get a 1-year non-guaranteed deal. 3 new offensive linemen, Pleasance, Heck, and Hennessy. All 3 of them may get re-signed when the season's over. Doesn't mean they don't sign a lineman or 2 in free agency. Doesn't mean they don't draft a lineman or 2 in April. They're going to bring in more bodies on the O-line to compensate for losing Banks, Jalen Moore potentially being gone as a swing tackle, Feliciano retiring, and can they upgrade from Zakeel or Burford or Brendel, McKivitz? If they bring someone in or draft someone in that knocks McKivitz out of right tackle, then that strengthens their swing tackle, right? Or potentially someone, could be a left guard or strengthen both tackle positions and both backup guard positions. So I'm curious to see who's going to play, what the offensive line combinations, are going to be for Arizona, because it gets, snaps. I think between Pleasance and Heck, they each had, 30, 35 plus snaps, how many offensive plays the Lions had. They split it right down the middle, getting an extended look. These are players that have had no benefit of training camp or practices, came in, practice or 2, started playing. Could potentially be good depth pieces next year. So moving on from the O-line, offensive skill position players, Pearsall and Kittle had big days, and I know we all feel good for Ricky Pearsall. Finally breaking out, 8 for 141 and a touchdown. Kittle went 8 for 112. He's over 1,000 yards on the season. Obviously, with what happened in Pearsall in the offseason, being shot, having, missing an extended early portion of the season, having a good game against Tampa, then disappearing for 5 weeks. I think he had 4 receptions last week, and it was 5 receptions the previous 5 weeks before this Detroit game. But it's good to see him that type of game. Now, we're going to slow our roll, right? We're going to slow our roll because we still don't know what he is. We saw the athleticism, the hands, the concentration on that sideline, one-handed catch that he kind of brought in. We saw the route running. We saw, a deep ball that Brock hit him down the right sideline. But again, if he feels like another Ayuk clone, someone that can be a savvy route runner, someone that can help beat man. He can get downfield, but he's not a burner. So like a possession receiver, another solid possession receiver, which Ayuk was. Obviously coming back from the ACL. That's what Jennings is. Not sure what Debo is at this point. Cowan, we know we can run, but with Ayuk starting off more than likely on the PUP list, that means they're going to need to bring in at least another receiver or 2 to start the season. Maybe it's a veteran. Maybe it's a draft pick. Maybe it's someone that has maybe some alpha male body type, built like a T.O., like a DK Metcalf, a Malik Neighbors with the Giants, Brian Thomas Jr. with the Jaguars, one of those big 6'2", 6'3", built physical specimens, size, speed, hands, measurable type guys. But obviously for Kyle, he's going to need to run routes. He's going to need to be able to block. So we'll see what they do. And no one exists on the practice squad too. Trent Taylor, Tariq Owens, Terrell Owens' son, Russell Gage, and they might have a 4th. I just don't recall. But behind Pearsall and Kittle, Jennings, 7 for 67. Garendo went 4 for 65. Nice catch down the sideline. Wheel route again from Brock, who was under pressure, made a really nice throw. And Debo, though he did have a touchdown on a push pass at the 5, that was his only reception, 1 for 5 and a touchdown, 3 rushes for 16 yards, and 2 of his rushes came on the first drive. So that leads us with the question of, I don't think they phased Debo out against the Lions. I don't think Debo was a decoy against the Lions. The Lions on 3rd down were playing a decent amount of man, and they played zone on early downs, especially some long down in distance when the Niners were getting behind the sticks due to penalties. But did Kyle force feed Pearsall? I think Pearsall had 10 targets. I think Kittle or Jennings also had 10 targets. So your top 3 pass catchers had 23 receptions and another 4 by Isaac Rendo. I mean, if they were only going to run the ball 18 times and they threw it for 400 yards on the button, of course people were going to have big games. It was surprising, though, that it was Pearsall. Not so surprising about Kittle. And Jennings, when things, I think, shake out to normal, this is probably going to be I don't want to say normal Jennings stat line, but somewhere in the 40 to 70 range is, I think, where Jennings is going to live. And maybe even less than that next year when Ayuk's healthy, when Pearsall gets another training camp, and who knows if Debo is going to be on the team. I am leaning towards yes as of January 2nd. So let's go from the skill positions to Brock. Overall performance was good. It was good. It was a B plus performance. Threw for 377, a career high, completed 77% of his passes, 3 touchdowns. Obviously, the 2 second half interceptions were costly by Kirby Joseph. 1 rushing touchdown. So Brock accounted for 4 touchdowns on the day, but what people are going to harp on are the turnovers. 1 interception in the third, a ball that got away from him out in front of Ricky Pearsall and high, right to Kirby Joseph for his first interception, and the pick in the fourth quarter with 7.5 minutes to go. I don't want to say Kirby Joseph baited him, but Brock and Kyle love to throw the in routes, love to throw, that 15-yard intermediate in. Detroit had the right defense in where they were playing, a single high safety robber who came down, jumped in front of Pearsall, and got the interception. You tip your cap to Joseph and the Lions, knowing that was coming and making a good play on the ball. That is the kind of safety the Niners need. That's why I'm okay with getting rid of Talanoa Hufanga. They need a center fielder. Now, easier said than done finding one. I mean, there are a handful or more in the draft, but as a rookie, it's going to take time, and I don't know who's available free agency-wise to bring in. The Niners like their safeties to be interchangeable, and that's fine, but I wouldn't call Hufanga center fielder, wouldn't call Mustafa, Jair Brown, or Tayshaun Gibson, even when he was at his best with San Francisco. I wouldn't call him a true center fielder. Going back to someone like, we're going back 30 years, but like Merton Hanks, someone that isn't going to be a force in run support, can drop down and cover a third receiver or tight end if needed, but someone that's going to protect the back end, jump in front of patterns, force receivers to make contested catches. They have lacked that for a while. I mean, you want to say maybe Tony Parrish, maybe Deshaun Golston, and that's on the low end of the spectrum. I'm not expecting him to get an alpha dog ball hawk in the offseason, but I think searching for that is more beneficial to this defense and secondary than paying Talanoa Hufanga $10, $12+ million a year for what he provides. Just me. Brock does have 6 fourth quarter interceptions this season, and it's 3 straight games. So between this game, the Dolphin game, the Rams game, late interceptions. I don't know if it's a matter of him pressing, feeling like he has to take the shot. The Ram game, that was the interception down the sidelines, trying to get it to Jennings. Threw Pearsall, the play or two before, got knocked away, went to Jennings, who was kind of bracketed, double covered, overthrew him, intercepted in the end zone. And obviously the last drive or second to last drive against Miami the week after the Ram game. Got to clean up the late interceptions. In a season like this, you want to chalk it up to learning. That's fine. But I also would like to see growth in terms of taking what the defense is giving, not having to push the ball downfield until you absolutely need to push the ball downfield, where you're really up against it. I don't think any of the instances where he's thrown picks the last 3 games warrants that. Right? He's going to end up with 20 touchdowns and 12 interceptions on the season. 1 more interception than last year, and he's played 1 less game. 11 fewer touchdowns than last year, and he's obviously played 1 less game and missing Ayuk and McCaffrey and just a whole lot that has not gone right for the offense. And we have to be fair and say some of it, I don't know if you want to say half, whatever percentage you want to place on Brock since he's the quarterback and the trigger man. He's regressed. The whole offense has regressed. We're not going to say otherwise, but there are people out there after the game that flat out said Brock lost them the game. That Brock's interceptions, and of course, the late interception with 7.5 to go was difficult and a good play by the defense, but difficult to stomach, as a Niner fan. But nobody, and I don't know if these are just short-minded people that, again, the QB gets too much blame and too much praise. If these are people that have short-term memories and that's their parting shot from the game, how about the defense letting up 300 in the air? How about the defense letting up over $150 on the ground? The defense literally not getting any stops. No turnovers, no punts, no pass rush outside of Nick Bosa, 2 sacks and 7 pressures. Jake Moody missing 2 field goals and an extra point. His confidence is shot. I think there's the only mystery to me now is, do they release him sometime in the offseason? Just flat out release him. Can confidence be rebuilt in an offseason? I guess. I don't know. I've never played professional sports. I really don't know. Maybe the Niners think it would be better to have a fresh break. I don't think they should draft another kicker. I mean, you look at some of the kickers around the league. The Rams kicker, I believe, is it Ryland or no? The Rams kicker, undrafted rookie free agent. The Vikings kicker was either a low round pick or an undrafted rookie free agent. The Cardinals kicker, who they're going to see, was an undrafted rookie free agent out of Stanford. Look at the Jets. Jets and Niners wind up picking up Matthew Wright and Andrews Carlson off the scrap heap and got serviceable games out of them. That's not to say that Andrews Carlson is a long-term answer, because he's got a wild leg as well. But they're going to have to maybe decide based on who's out there, or maybe someone that they can bring in. They should be bringing in at least one veteran and one undrafted rookie for a tryout if they keep Moody on the roster. But I think it might be better served if they just have a clean break, because I think his confidence on the team is shot. And, Debo's outburst, slapping, grabbing Tabor Pepper's throat obviously didn't help matters from a Moody confidence standpoint, but it just goes to show how frustrated the Niners are with the special teams situation, how frustrated fans are with the special teams situation. And the sacrificial lambs are going to be special teams coordinator Brian Schneider, Jake Moody, and I honestly do believe Nick Sorensen. But it wasn't Moody's fault. It wasn't the defense's fault. It was Brock's fault, guys. It's always going to be Brock's fault. And again, I said the quarterbacks get too much praise and too much blame, but Brock was going, toe to toe with Goff. Still had a QB rating over 115, had a higher QBR than Goff that game for whatever it's worth, which is not much, obviously, but I'm just giving you actual stats and facts. Brock Purdy wasn't the issue, but Brock Purdy can't get a break because the elbow injury had social media abuzz with absurd speculation declaring that it was another UCL tear, minutes after it happened, and saying that his arm was on fire. Oh, that sounds like Philadelphia. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a UCL tear again. These, again, one was from a physical therapist, another from a doctor, another from just a moronic content creator that, not to get back on the soapbox, but for people that do this for a living, I feel bad in a way, although they don't need me to feel bad for them. If you're a full-time content creator, the chances of you pumping out shit content is high, because you have to pump out a whole lot of content just for engagement, just to keep your followers happy, your eyeballs on you. And do you want to be conservative and say 50% of it's trash? 50% of it is just content for content's sake, or to stir the pot, or to antagonize people for responses and posts and engagement? Absolutely. And the UCL injury was a forum or a platform for people to become doctors and grasp at another reason as to why Brock Purdy is not the guy in their world, in their false narrative of knuckle dragging, mouth breathing nonsense. After the game, both Kyle and Brock said, we think it hit the ulnar nerve. We checked out the elbow, checked out the wrist. And Brock said the same thing afterwards. The UCL was fine. They tested on the sideline. We knew it wasn't that. We want to get some imaging done, MRI, see what's going on. He's like, but I wasn't worried about that. Yeah, my arm was on fire. I couldn't grip. I was numb. And why does your arm go numb, guys? When either you tear your UCL or you really hit the shit out of your funny bone. And that's essentially what happened. Remember, in the Eagles game, he got hit throwing the ball this way, and the hit caused the elbow to go this way and snap. When he got tackled, his arm was compressed into him. Not that it protected the UCL, but you could see more of a shoulder injury, the joint, the ball and socket kind of jamming into itself, more so than something with a ligament in the arm. Now, granted, very violent, got hit by a helmet and a face mask. A lot of shit could go wrong when you're getting hit like that, but in no way did it look, even when they were showing the replays, and I'm looking at it going, wow, I'm surprised Brock's hurt. Where, it's essentially, when players get a stinger in the shoulder, he got a stinger, not here. And that's something that I didn't hear an update on, if his arm is still numb, 4 days later, but it's something that could take hours to go away. It could take a couple days to go away, but it's nothing that the training staff or Kyle or Brock are concerned about in terms of anything long-term. It's considered inflammation of the ulnar nerve and a contusion, meaning it got hit. He's going to be out this week against Arizona. And I said, maybe that's a blessing. Not the fact that he got a minor-ish injury to a part of his body where he had major reconstructive surgery, but to keep him out of a meaningless game. And we're going to be talking about injuries, in a few minutes of players who might not play, but for someone like Brock, even if he's okay enough to go, just sit him. There's really no reason at this point for, they shut down Trent Williams, ankle. They shut down Dre Greenlaw, calf, I guess. They may shut down other players too that we're going to get to. Throwing arm, throwing elbow, a Monday night game, one less day to recover. I'm totally okay with sitting when I think it's the smart thing, but now, beyond the social media doctors, beyond the social media knuckle draggers and mouth breathers, the people that just have a vendetta against Brock or don't believe he's the guy, now are coming out and saying, see, you can't pay Brock. He's injury prone. Okay, let's fact check that. Including the game that has not happened yet on Sunday, Brock will have missed 2 games his entire career in 2.5 years. Injury prone. Joe Burrow missed a whole lot of time reconstructing his wrist and his ACL, and he's having a monstrous season. He should not be league MVP. I mean, if his stats meant as much as people would think they meant, then they wouldn't be 8-8. They'd already have clinched a playoff spot. You can't give the MVP to a player who's not on a top team. It's not the way that voters think or work, because he's not having the MVP type impact on his team that you would think those stats would correlate to. But this even extends to someone like Brian Baldinger, which he's had 2 bad 49er takes in a row, saying that, I'd be more concerned about Brock's health than his late, quarter interceptions. Take a guy like that. He played Jared Goff. He's played every game. You need somebody like that. Douchebag. Brock played every game last season. Well, excuse me. He didn't play week 18. Sam Darnold did, because that game didn't matter against the Rams because they'd already sewn up home field advantage. Don't talk if you're not knowledgeable. Brian Baldinger is the same moron who said the Niners should contact Minnesota in the offseason to trade for Sam Darnold, who is not under contract with Minnesota in 2025. Do a little bit of research if you're going to talk. If you are an NFL analyst, have knowledge. Why does someone like me have more knowledge than someone who actually who played the game and gets paid to talk about it? I follow the Niners much more closely than he probably follows any team in the league. But come on, dude, have a little bit of understanding about what you're talking about before you state things to fuel your narrative, and it makes you look like a moron. Still, people going, this is why the Niners should draft a quarterback early, or even people saying they should be drafting a running back in the second or third round. Guys, it's fair to say, while the Niners have a lot of needs, right? I mean, they're not bereft of talent, but they need help on the D-line at tackle and end. They need help on the O-line, either guard tackle or guard center. They could use a safety. They could use another linebacker if Greenlaw goes. They can use another corner since they're losing Ward. They definitely need a tight end too. What they do not need in rounds 1, 2, or 3, and they have 2 third-round picks, is a quarterback or a running back. And Cam Scatterbu, who had a huge game for Arizona yesterday in the Peach Bowl against who they wind up playing, I'm completely blanking out on it, Texas, and he was named Peach Bowl MVP, ran for over $140, had 99 yards receiving, threw for 45, had multiple touchdowns, huge game. Now you're seeing people, because they saw one game of this guy, oh, what do you think about drafting him in the second or third round? No. He reminds me more of Mike Allstott. Remember him from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Than an actual running back. Now, he could be like a Thunder to a Thunder and Lightning backfield, but that's not in San Francisco, because Kyle's not going to play more than one back at a time unless a back gets hurt. And even if a back gets hurt, then the backup plays and his backup will sit. Be wary of bowl season, guys, because anybody that has a good game, and it could be a good game, a good season, and Scotty had a good season. He was, I think, 5th in the Heisman voting? But there are positions that the Niners do not need in some order. Their first 4 picks, first round, second round, and 2 third-round picks, should be D tackle, D end, O-line, and tight end. And if it happens in that order, 1, 2, 3, 3, that would make sense to me. I can't imagine them spending a first-round pick on a tight end of those 3 positions. And if they do finish with the 11th pick overall, I can't see them spending it on an offensive tackle, because I don't know if they're going to value that position highly enough to take somebody, which is why a second or third round pick in that position sounds a little bit better for me. But no, they're not going to draft a quarterback early. No, they're not going to bring in someone like Jackson Dart as the backup to Brock Purdy, because why in the world, or any rookie quarterback, Dylan Gabriel from Oregon, Carson Beck, if he drops, why in the world, what universe do you think exists that Kyle Shanahan will be comfortable having a rookie quarterback behind Brock? He has 2 veteran quarterbacks behind Brock. The rookie, Tanner Mordecai, is on the practice squad. And if you want to say, well, if they were to draft a more highly rated quarterback, then he wouldn't be on the practice squad. He'd be on the 53. Okay, I can get behind Brock, a veteran backup, and a rookie. Although if your rookie's your third string quarterback, that's a waste of a roster spot. You might as well just have that rookie on the practice squad and have a third string veteran quarterback, or just go with 2 QBs and use that position elsewhere, because they obviously have needs. I wonder, after 2 straight years of having 3 quarterbacks on the 53, if next year Kyle would go to 2 and 1 on the practice squad. Because if you get to a game and you're down to Brandon Allen or Tanner Mordecai or a rookie from this year's draft class, the game's probably over anyway, right? So Brock's injury changed nothing. It's minor. And remember, too, I'm just going to use one example. Remember when Drew Brees went from the Chargers to the Dolphins? That year, Chargers to the Saints. That year, he had reconstructive surgery on his shoulder. I think it was a torn labrum. That didn't scare off the Saints. It scared off the Dolphins, who I believe was Nick Saban the coach at the time. I might be wrong on that. But think about how the Dolphins' fortunes during Drew Brees' time with New Orleans would have been different if they actually signed Drew Brees. Teams get scared of major injuries. I get it. And if Brock had the UCL injury this year instead of last year, maybe that does lead some doubt into a contract extension. And I think it'll be very understandable to fans. It'll probably be understandable to Brock and his representation, even though they probably would still want a contract, given the performance that Brock would have had to this point. But nothing changed with Brock. He is still the $50+ million man. That's the floor. 50 million is the floor. If anybody thinks otherwise, you're entitled to your opinion. I just want you to know when it happens and Brock gets more than $50 million annually, those people would have been proven wrong. And they're not going to backtrack and move the goalposts and say, well, I knew Brock was going to get 50 million, but I think he's only worth 40. Well, then you don't understand market dynamics. You don't understand what quarterbacks are worth. And you're just saying stuff to either be obstinate, flat out stupid, or a hater, right? Because you don't understand what a quarterback like Brock is worth. A top 8 to 13 quarterback in this league. He's in the next tier down from the top, 6 or 7. He's in the Love, the Tua, the Goff, although he's having a really great year, the Hurts, and the Trevor Lawrence tier. And since they got in the 50s, Brock's getting in the 50s. Easy peasy. All the full court press, and this is the phrase, full court press in the world from Ivory Tower 49er content creators. Again, thinking that if they keep putting this stuff out, that it's going to matter. It's not going to matter. Doesn't matter what I say, what you guys think, what anybody says, other than Brock, his agent, Parag Marath, Kyle, if he gets involved at all, John, and the market. The market matters. Nothing else does, guys. And I know you know that because I know I have the smartest viewer and listenership out there, but just wanted to state it again. If you guys didn't know, the 4 Niners made the Pro Bowl. Excuse me. Nick Bosa, George Kittle, Fred Warner, and Kyle Juszczyk. So Bosa, though he missed, I think, 3 games so far, 9 sacks, 15 tackles for loss, 1 pass defense, 1 interception. Kittle, 1,079 yards and 8 touchdowns, and I believe 70-ish catches. Fred Warner, 123 tackles, 1 sack, 4 tackles for loss, 7 pass defense, 2 interceptions, and 1 touchdown, playing more than half the season on a broken ankle. Juszczyk, 5 rushes for 26 yards and a touchdown, 17 receptions for 151 and a touchdown. Of those players, the only one that might not be back next year is Juszczyk, and I honestly think he will, because until the Niners can actually get a tight end 2, he kind of fills that role from the fullback spot. And you have a top, 3, 5 player in the other 3 Pro Bowl positions, at D end in Bosa, at tight end in Kittle, and at linebacker in Warner. And we're going to get into the Niners team, and there's the covered bear, and if you pay Brock, you can't pay other people. I have some thoughts on that I think are best served for after the season. But what I will say is, you have a top 3 player, and you have a top 10 quarterback in Brock, top 12, let's say. You have a top 3 running back in McCaffrey, a top 3 tight end in Kittle, a top 3 tackle in Trent Williams, a top 10, 12 receiver in Brandon Ayuk. You have a top 3 defensive end in Bosa, a top 3 linebacker in Fred Warner, and you have a top 10, top 12 cornerback in Demo. I think folks out there saying that the Niners can't pay everybody and they're going to start losing people is wildly exaggerated, because those are the players that I listed that are on the team and that are going to be on the team for the foreseeable future. I think Kittle gets an extension. He can't play forever, but he might have another 3 or 4 years left. Warner can't play forever. He might have another 3 or 4 years left, maybe more. And I think Juice is close to the end, because next year is his last year under contract. But when you think about the roster and you think about who's gotten paid and the talented players, do they need some depth? Do they need some better D tackles, generate more pass rush, some better coaches on defense and special teams? Yeah. But anyone thinks that the window is closed for the 49ers in the future is wildly wrong. And I'm not a homer, and I'm not an optimistic person at all. They play in the NFC West, which is a bad division. The NFC Conference isn't fantastic. And they have a 4th place schedule coming back next season. Again, I'm going to go into this more in future podcasts. Maybe the next one post Arizona, I'm going to do a season recap as well. But think about the players that are on the team under contract that are not going anywhere for the next 2 or 3 years. The window's still open, guys. And the final window of this season, which will close next Sunday. The Niners at Arizona, 4:25 Eastern. The Cardinals are a 4.5-point favorite. Josh Dobbs will be starting instead of Brandon Allen. This was interesting. Per Kyle, when he was asked, I think the question was, are you starting Dobbs due to uncertainty on the line? And he said, yeah, that's really part of it. With left tackle either being Austin Pleasance or Charlie Heck, left guard being Nick Sakiel. And again, the line did not look terrible. I'll just throw this out there as food for thought. This is going to go either way, right? You pay Brock a lot of money. You should protect that investment. And I think they will, based on the number of new faces they're going to bring in to compete. But I think at the end of the day, the offensive line is not going to look all that different. I think it's going to be Trent Williams at left tackle. I think Ben Barch comes back at left guard and competes and has a good chance of winning the left guard spot. I think there'll be a new center, whether it's Matt Hennessy or another veteran they sign. I think Brendan will be gone. You have Purdy and you have McKivitz, unless they draft the tackle early that can beat McKivitz out. 2 new starters on the O-line, 1 potentially completely new face from outside the organization at center, and Barch, who's with the team the past 2 years, getting elevated to left guard. I think the backups, maybe 2 or 3 of the 4 backups will be new in terms of depth, but I don't think this O-line is going to look as different as a lot of us are hoping. So it goes, well, you're paying Brock a lot of money. Don't you want to protect the investment on the O-line? That's one way to look at it. But I wonder, given this Dobbs starting because of the O-line, do the 49ers staff think they can get away with the offensive line that they've put out there and will continue to put out there because of Brock's mobility? Really good pocket awareness, good feel, gets out of pressures, gets out of sacks, picks up yards with his legs. I don't know if that's an actual overt thought or things that anyone's saying out loud in Santa Clara. But it's the reason why Dobbs is starting this week against Arizona. So just food for thought. Juwan Jennings, that receiver, needs 67 yards to hit 1,000. Kyle Shanahan's been made aware of that. Jennings will be playing. I don't know if they're going to force feed it to him, but I don't know if he has any sort of incentive in his contract that he gets X amount for going over 1,000 yards. I don't think anyone thought 1,000 yards was honestly on the table for him. Given Ayuk, Debo, Kittle, McCaffrey, and Pearsall coming in, pre-gunshot. But good for him. He's really exceeded my expectations of what I thought, he would be, that he could max out at. Self-made, 7th-round draft pick, cut his first year on the practice squad. Stats have increased every year he's been with the team, got a nice extension last offseason, playing on the final year of his contract this offseason. Curious if the Niners think about extending him again, but now you're going to be extending a close to or above 1,000-yard receiver, which means he's going to be more costly, but something to keep our eye on. In terms of injuries, the following 8 players are questionable: Kittle, Debo, Colton McKivitz, Ricky Pearsall. On defense, Leonard Floyd, Nick Bosa, Isaac Yiadom, Diamador Lenore. Kyle Shanahan came out and said, obviously, the players that can't go aren't going to go. We're not going to force players to play through something that is really nagging them. Obviously, people are beat up this time of year. I don't know if they can sit. You have to sit between 5 and 7 players. You can call up 2 from the practice squad, and if you call up 2 and activate them, then you're able to sit 7 on your active roster, right? So you have 53 on your roster. You sit 5 to get to your game day 48. But if you sit 7 off your 53, that's 46. 2 from the practice squad makes 48. I doubt that they can sit all of these players. I think someone like a McKivitz and a Pearsall play. I could see either Floyd or Bosa sitting. I think Yiadom probably plays. Maybe Lenore sits again. Thinking about protecting some players for next year. Even, Kittle's like super banged up. I mean, maybe you see what you have in your other 3 tight ends. And although we know, because they don't get involved, in Sauber, in Jake Tonjes, and Braden Willis, at least you have 3. It's not like you need Kittle to be a 3rd. So we'll see. In terms of prediction for a game, I honestly don't care. It's the last 49er game until beginning of August with preseason. 7 months. We are going to go 7 months now because of no playoffs without 49er football. It sucks. It sucks for any of us that are fans. It sucks for me. It's the only team I follow that I really follow and get into. And it stinks. The season didn't go the way that anybody wanted, but it was the positives coming out. We're going to go into seeing the draft class succeed, that it was a good draft class, at least so far. Players getting meaningful snaps. Another year of Jake Moody, seeing that he's not the guy. Brian Schneider's not the coach to lead the special teams. Nick Sorensen's not the coach. I mean, things have gotten revealed or unearthed in a bad season, which isn't the worst thing in the world. It'd be tough to be like scraping into the playoffs with Moody as your kicker, Schneider and Sorensen kind of leading the way for special teams and DC. Let it happen on a down year. Let it happen on a year where they're more or less bottoming out. Whole lot of injuries, whole lot of players on IR that are going to be coming back next year, and more of the young players getting some run. Since this game means nothing for their fourth place schedule and they've guaranteed it, a loss will keep the Niners at 11th. A win will keep could push the Niners to 14th. 11, 14 doesn't really matter. They're probably not going to make the pick that we're hoping they make in the first round anyway. They always kind of zig when we're expecting them to zag. See Ricky Pearsall last year. So I'm rooting for a win. Love to see, does Dobbs show enough that, they invite him back next year as the backup? Possible. Again, last Niner game for 7 months, guys. Enjoy it. Just want to get out of there healthy, right? Want to see maybe some additional progress from someone like a Gruendo, a Kittle, a Mustafa, other tight ends not named Kittle, other DNs not named Bosa or Floyd. And we'll see where the dust settles, and we'll be counting down the days to free agency, although the Niners will start making moves before March. I mean, they can re-sign their own. They can re-sign Brock. I'm not sure when that exactly starts, if it's after the Super Bowl or so. Might not be, significant Niner news for maybe another, 3 or 4 weeks. But there'll always be something to discuss and talk about, including end of season recap and plans for the offseason, ranking offensive free agents, defensive free agents, who the Niners might bring back, what the plan is. There's always stuff going on in Ninerland. We just won't be talking about a look ahead game or a look back recap, which stinks, but come back with a fury in 2025. That concludes the 49ers Plus podcast for this week. Like always, want to thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to make us part of your viewing and listening routine. Enjoy the college football quarterfinals game last night, game today at 3 p.m. Eastern, Georgia and Notre Dame. Obviously, thoughts and prayers go out to all those who were affected by what happened in New Orleans yesterday. And then, coming up on the semifinals and national championship. So between now and then, enjoy whatever football is on. A couple days to the Niners season finale at Arizona. We will talk after, probably Monday, maybe Tuesday at the absolute latest. It may be a 1-episode podcast week. I'll just have to see how things go. But between now and then, Happy New Year. Be happy, be healthy, be safe. We will talk soon. Take care.